Most asked question in JavaScript interview is closures. So what is the closures and what is the concept of using closures in JavaScript? Let's deep dive into JavaScript closures and the execution of JavaScript code in call stack. Understand the execution of JavaScript code. There is a single call stack where JavaScript code executes. Whenever you call any function, first it creates memory allocation, then it executes in the top of call stack. When that function finished execution, it popped out from the call stack and removes all the memory which is allocated for that function, which is fine in this condition. But suppose what happened if there is another inner function which is used variables of the outer function and it is returned from the outer function. But when outer function completes its execution and released all its memory, then what will be happen with the inner function which is going to be called later? When inner function is called, from where it's supposed to find the outer function variable which is already released from the memory. So to fix this problem, the closures comes into the picture. So what happens in closures? When any inner function is returned and it used outer function variable, so after completion of outer function executes, the JavaScript engine will create closures for the inner function, where inner function keeps reference of the outer function variables in the memory, which remains exist in the memory even after outer function memory is released. And when inner function execution is completes, the inner function memory is released, and when the inner function memory is released, its closure reference will also be released. But outer function variables which is used by the inner function still exist in the memory. That reference is released only. The memory is still in the variables memory still exist in the memory, and it is released by the JavaScript garbage collector, which runs periodically and search for a variables which doesn't have a reference. Those things will be released by the memory. Actually, this is the actual definition of the closures. Now coming into the code and see how closures looks into the browser. Here in this code I have created one outer function, and inside this outer function I have written one inner function. So in a simple word, if any interviewer asks you a question of what is closures, you can simply tell them that if inner function is returned from the outer function and that inner function is using any variable from the outer function scope, that time a closure is created for the inner function, so it can access the variable from the closures. So there is it keeps a reference from the memory. So that is a closure. You can just simply tell him that any inner function, whenever any inner function is returned and it used any outside function variable, that time a closure is created. So here I will show you in the browser how closure looks in the console. Here you can see in the scopes one closure is created outer function which hold a value of x2. Suppose if I created one more variable m and I am not using m variable inside this inner function, so m will be not store in the closure because m is not using anymore. So m is not here in the inside this closure. You can see if those variables which I have used inside this inner function, only those variables will be saved in exist in the memory as a closure, which is reference to this inner function. Suppose I have created one more function outer and cut this code and paste inside this outer function. Okay, return this outer function also, and here declare a variable z equal to 1 and use that variable z inside this inner function. Now call this as outer here, so it will return this outer function, and this if I add parenthesis over here, then it will call this outer function and it returns an inner function that is here. So here now in this inner function there will be two closures created, one outer and second one will be outer function, which holds in outer closure z variable will be hold, and in this outer function x will be hold. So just see in the browser console. Here you can see two closures have been created, one outer function which hold x value and outer closure which holds z value, because inside this inner function two variables are it is using from the parent scope. There is those are two variables, that is x and z. That's why x and z closures has been created for these two outer functions. If I am not returning this inner function, then there will be no any closure will be created. So, and here it will console undefined, because I am not returning anything from the outer function, that so that it is undefined here consoling. So hope you understand what is closure and how can you explain to the interviewer if they ask you what is closures in JavaScript. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much.